Hello everybody and welcome to Encounter Roleplay. My name is Will. I'm a D&D sex icon, the world's greatest role player, and I'm here today for the first episode, in fact it's session 0, of Game of Thrones War of the Roses. We've got almost all of us with us today. We have one player who will be joining us next week. Steel Rain will be with us for the first session, but fear not. For the rest of us are here, and we're going to talk a little bit about our characters, and we're going to have a fun little session 0 and talk about the game we're going to be playing. So on that note, let's introduce ourselves. Let's figure out who we are, and of course, who we're going to be playing this season. So let's go around and introduce ourselves. Someone I know very well is Mr. Joseph from the Tongue Close podcast. Joseph, how's it going, buddy?
Hello, everyone. It is fantastic. I'm so happy to be here. I've been binging Game of Thrones for about a week and a half now, and I'm on season 3 to catch up and do some research on this. So, yeah, I'm going to be playing Cicero, who is a human rogue noble. That's all I've got figured out. I am so incredibly excited to get into world building with you guys and get to know you all. So yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to get to know more about Cicero and the whole cast of characters who are with us today as well. We also have Dream Wisp with us tonight. Jen, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? I am doing great. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be a blast. So yeah, I've loved Game of Thrones since, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years before they ever announced that they were doing a TV show. So I'm so psyched to go run around Westeros.
Hell yeah, awesome.
And I am playing Devran, who is a member of the Night's Watch.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
I'm looking forward to learning more about what I've already heard is a very interesting character. Great stuff. We also have Bird versus Plane of us tonight. How's it going, Bird?
It's going so well. I've never been more certain that I've been so excited to be backstabbed by friends and loved ones in my entire life. I have loved Game of Thrones. I saw season 1 and I caught up on all the books like within 3 months, and I thought, it's been 2 years since the last one. Certainly the next book is coming out soon. No. So I'm so excited to create our own story within this universe. I'll be playing Septon Birch, who is a devoted Septon to the seven-sided god, the true god of Westeros.
Awesome. Absolutely fantastic. And last but not least, we have Kitty with us tonight. Kitty, how's it going? It's been a while.
It has. It's been like 2 years now, hasn't it?
Probably, yeah. Jesus.
But I'm graduated now, so I can do these things again.
Congratulations. That's awesome. More Game of Thrones time.
Yeah, woo! So I'm playing a kid tween character called Kaylee Tarbeck. I'm leaving it super open-ended just to sort of develop as the story goes. She's the daughter of a blacksmith who makes the swords for the house and other goods. So we'll just see what trouble she falls into.
Absolutely. Well, this is the perfect time to flesh out our characters, to talk a little bit about the game. And I think all of us here, except for myself, have never played this system before. And probably haven't played in Westeros before, or maybe new to the whole Game of Thrones thing. Maybe you know a little bit about it, or maybe you're a super buff, but it doesn't matter because the game system itself is super easy, and I don't like rules anyway, so it's going to be a fun ride through Westeros one way or another. So what our session 0 is going to be is us talking about our characters, figuring out how we are, figuring out how our characters may very well be connected. And then I want to talk a little bit about the noble house, because with character creation in a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game, not only do you create your own characters, but we as a group get to create our noble house that we're a part of, or at least involved with. And one of the fun parts about the game is that you manage the house as well. And there's a little bit of sort of, city management that gets to go on. It's not very often, but it's a fun little part of the game that we can, manage our resources and decide what kind of house we would like to be. But firstly, I want to dive in a little bit deeper on what you think your characters might look like. As a bit of a backstory to what we've talked about as a group so far, just over message, is that we wanted to create a noble house, I believe somewhere in the north, which is essentially, medieval Europe, a little bit colder than most places, maybe a little bit like Scotland in many ways. And for a very quick look at what Game of Thrones is, consider medieval Europe. It's very low magic, so there is fantastical stuff going on, but most of it is probably not going to be covered in our game. Stuff like the White Walkers and that kind of stuff we may get glimpses at, but it's probably not going to be a sword and sorcery, Gandalf throwing around fireballs kind of game. So if you can picture what medieval Europe would look like, you're pretty much there. You've got knights in armor and heraldic stuff going on, but also a hell of a lot of backstabbing and courtly intrigue as well. So that's where we're at. Also, as a quick note for any Game of Thrones buffs out there who are going to correct us on things, I know a little bit about it. I've GM'd the game for a couple of years, but I'm really just going on the stuff that I think is cool. And we reserve the right to screw up with George R.R. Martin's canon and lore as much as we want. So keep that in mind. But let's start a little bit by honing in on the characters and learning a little bit more about them. So let's start with Cicero. Now, Cicero is one of the later sons of the lord of our noble house. We don't know who the lord is yet. We all only know right now is that the house is somewhere in the north. Joseph, tell us a bit more about Cicero.
So Cicero, I'm going to keep some things on the down low for now. But he is usually seen around the town riding, very immaculately dressed. He's very slender. He's a noted vegetarian, which is, no one's really sure why here in the north, because you eat meat to put meat on your bones to stay warm. But here's Cicero, this 28-year-old man who just runs around eating vegetables. So yeah, he's about 6'1". The character actually does him justice, and I'm looking at it and then looking at my own face, and I'm like, good God, he drew me. But no, that's neither here nor there. So I imagine him as more of a dirty blonde, but yes, immaculately dressed, and he usually always has a cape over his left shoulder with his set of riding gloves and boots. I think that's where I'm going to rest on his description for now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely flesh that out, and you can. Often the first session is somewhere where you kind of realize what this character might look like or sound like. So Cicero, he's a later son, like maybe a third or fourth son, so not directly in line to inherit any kind of title, or probably too much responsibility for that matter as well. That being said, he's in a place of utmost privilege for being a legitimate heir to a noble house, however big that may be. How has this affected Cicero's, upbringing, I guess, as a person? Is he the kind of person who's going to, who strives for a leadership role, or is he quite comfortable in his life?
He was always sort of the odd one out. As a kid, and he found himself getting into trouble, usually hanging out with other children who weren't of noble birth and kind of messing around in whatever township we find ourselves in. And eventually kind of grew out of that and was like, all right, I'm the son of a noble, I need to act accordingly. So started practicing with a sword, but a rapier, again, another odd thing in the north from what I've seen of Game of Thrones. They're always swinging these giant broadswords around, which is cool. But I am particularly attracted to Needle. That is a very nice looking sword. So that's kind of what I imagine him carrying around. But
cool.
Yeah, I think he's pretty happy with the role that he's in. Power is something that he respects, but doesn't necessarily strive to have all of it.
Cool. So that's seeing as you're intricately involved in the noble family itself, and this is something we're all going to get a chance to throw some input into. But I'd like to know who you think your father, is as a person. We don't have to name them, but your father, or if he's still in charge, or maybe it's the firstborn son, your brother who's currently leading the family. Father and mother, what kind of dynamic do you have there?
Oh boy. Yeah, I definitely will appreciate more input in this, but I do imagine their relationship is, pretty solid. Nothing terribly wrong, no hindrances between them. And I do think Cicero is more definitely the baby of whatever, the family, however many siblings we decide he has. But yeah, I definitely view him as having a good relationship with his family, but that it is a family of the North with kind of stoic and very much, there to impart justice in the best way possible.
Right. I think that's probably true. They hold to these old values of family and religion and being close to one another. So probably quite a traditional family by the sounds of things there. I wonder if maybe there is slight, some distance between you and your father, and due to the fact that he probably needs to focus his attentions on his firstborn son, maybe his second as well, because when he dies, as he's going to, at some point, because people don't live to, 100, he's probably going to need to focus his attentions on him. So I wonder if there's a little bit of distance, like you've been allowed some free reign to hang out with the common, kids as you were growing up, because no one was really keeping an eye on you as such, and you're a little bit of a offbeat because of that. Okay, let's swing over to someone I think will also be involved in the house, who is the Septon. Septon Birch, tell us a little bit more about him, Bud.
Sure. Septon Birch, from a physical standpoint, he stands about 5'9" or so. He's been here for a little bit of time. When he first came here, relatively skinny dude, but being a Septon, not exactly a high physically demanding job, and this dude has clearly enjoyed that aspect of his work, and he's kind of put on a little bit of a paunch.
It's a bit of a
as such, he has
kind of look. Yeah.
Exactly. And so he used to move kind of gracefully, but this extra weight, he kind of moves a little awkwardly now. Got a bald head, a beard he tries to keep relatively tame, but it kind of just gets away from him sometimes, flecked with silvers and grays. And he wears these, typical white robes with a brown sole with the 7-sided star on it. And he tries to be the most amiable man possible. He tries to befriend everyone he meets and learn their story. He was sent here to kind of be a goodwill ambassador to the North and maybe be something that they could strive to be themselves. I mean, we've all heard tales about the North. They worship the old gods. They worship the trees, that kind of thing. And the Great Sept, listen, the 7-sided deity, that is the deity of Westeros. So initially, Birch was sent up here to kind of remind them of that. Yeah, you can have your little trees in your gardens, but remember, we are the religion of King's Landing, so we are your religion because you bend the knee.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. The King Robert Baratheon and his court in King's Landing, all about the Seven. And so you're probably, a missionary being sent up to those, not those savages, but, they're a little bit more, old and set in their ways, and they need a little reminder. And, Septon Birch, you go out there because, maybe weren't being too useful in King's Landing, and this might be a sort of being put out to pasture type deal, but you're pretty quite enjoying it by the sounds of things.
There's plenty of doddering old fools in King's Landing, so getting rid of one doesn't really upset the balance too much there. Giving this guy something to do, kind of a favor to everybody.
Right. So in that respect, you would hold a position of political privilege and safety within the noble house, because it's not like they can't take you in. They basically, you probably got a sealed order from King Baratheon to say he's gonna stay here, just so you know. So you probably have your own little sept. It may be that not many people visit it, and you have a small congregation. But I wonder if that may be a connection for Cicero, if he's a little bit off the beaten path and open to meeting people from different places. You certainly haven't met anyone from King's Landing probably before. Maybe a few visiting traveling nobles occasionally, but this sovereign is certainly something of a marvel in the pretty bleak north. Do you think Cicero may have struck up some kind of connection there?
Oh, of course.
I think so.
I think Cicero, yeah, and I think he's got a sense of adventure. He'd be like, this dude coming in from King's Landing, absolutely, I want to eat him.
Right. So, Septon Birch, maybe, this probably for you, if you're looking to convert, like, this is the son of the Lord of the House. This is someone definitely worth befriending. Or at least, inserting a little bit of the 7 into his, uneducated mind.
If I could teach him about the father here, the mother there, the crone occasionally, just kind of soak in the seeds a little bit. Maybe he'll take that to his family, and maybe they'll start to embrace that too.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Do you think you guys have struck up a genuine friendship, or is this more of a, Septon Birch sees Cicero as like an asset, and does Cicero just see him as a friend, or is that more of a, this guy's a bit odd, and I want to see him, but, I don't actually agree with what he's saying.
What do you think, Cicero?
I could definitely see Cicero looking up to you as a kind of mentor, at least with a few quirks and maybe the guy that just rambles on in a corner about the different deities on occasion, but nothing that he wouldn't be able to tolerate, and certainly at least respect the viewpoint that you come from.
And from Birch's standpoint, at least, having a bumpy trip up here, kind of marked with tragedy, when he got here, he was looking for actual friends, looking for people to be close to him. So if Cicero was willing to listen and learn, he was more than ready to share his stories with him.
Right. I think you probably have received a cold shoulder from the rest of the house, and probably from the rest of the people as well. And so there probably aren't many people that, at best, people see you as an idiot for believing in something other than the old ways. At worst, they probably think you're like some kind of dangerous activist, right? They're like, he's coming in here and he's trying to change the minds of people. So it's not an easy job to be a missionary in a place like this. So a genuine friendship I can see striking up between the two. Awesome. So I want to swing over then to Kaylee, who I know we haven't fleshed out too much, but she's a bit more of an open book. I think we talked about her being the daughter of a blacksmith in the house. So what do you see her role being? Is she like an apprentice blacksmith, or
I would think so, because she's
some other kind of job? Okay.
She's like the only child, and she's just this young, bubbly, dirty, sort of rough kid, well, teenager, I guess, who's just kind of like it's just like out there to like really enjoy the world. She's just happy.
She's kind of bright-eyed, ingenue, sort of like, I want to see what the world has to offer. Does she have then, maybe some wanderlust in that the north is pretty bleak, and you've heard about, the south and the riches of, these cities and places that aren't home? Or is she really happy where she is? Does she enjoy
total wanderlust, like wanting to just like get out and really just see things and just be a part of the world, as like any probably only child that's like stuck with like you've got to take over this or marry someone to take over this, you've got to be this one thing.
Most likely then your father, I'm going to say, is then the family blacksmith to the house. So while he's a commoner, and so you'd enjoy a position of some privilege amongst the common folk, in that occasionally the Lord may meet with him, and certainly the garrison force are armed and armored by your family, which is something to be proud of, even if you don't want to be a blacksmith yourself for the rest of your life and stay here like your father did. So if you're a bit of a wanderlust kid as well, it seems like you and Cicero know each other. You may know each other from Cicero knowing the common folk. No one's really watching him. There's a connection there between, you may have met because Cicero needed his rapier, or his slightly odd sword being made. Do you think these characters may know each other from that somehow?
Probably. It'd be an interesting connection.
I couldn't see that. not? Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that is very, very convenient. And yeah, Cicero has very much taken interest in the common people, and he does like to be out among them, and he doesn't necessarily view them as below anyone. I think he's...
That was my next question, yeah.
Yeah. As far as everyone's standing goes, Cicero views humans as, people, which may not necessarily been what he was taught by his family, but his experience as a child is certainly, he's grown up knowing people and understanding that people are very much the same at their core, at least.
Yeah.
Just don't get him butchered, for sword fighting with him and getting caught and thrown in everything.
Yeah.
Let's not let that happen.
Like you guys maybe train with sword, or practice with swords when you're not meant to be, and you run away from when the Lord's not looking, when your dad's not looking. You guys run out into the Godswood and play around with swords. That's kind of cool. So does then Kaylee see Cicero as a way out? In some way, is this like, well, if I'm friends with Cicero and he's the son of a lord, maybe is she is she clever in that way?
I almost don't think that she would even think that. Like, just
right.
Like her mind, I really feel like she's just like an innocent character that just doesn't, like, she's been here in this one place and doesn't have a real idea of the world, but she thinks she has an idea of the world, so it allows like a room for like her soul to be crushed.
Yeah, that's perfect for me. So Cicero then, putting you back, throwing the ball back into your court here, with Kaylee, is she a real friend, someone that you see as being around for the rest of your life, or is this more of a, I practice swords with the blacksmith's daughter, but in the end I'm going to end up some owning my own keep somewhere in the north, and I will probably never see her again in a few years' time.
Oh, I think if she is a excellent blacksmith and has made the sword that he carries, then he would absolutely want her to be a part of whatever community he decides to found.
Question for Kaylee, yes. Are you a good blacksmith? Or is it just your father and you're trading on his name and you don't actually give a shit about blacksmithing?
I think we talked about her being like somewhat like really particularly interested in like sword fighting and whatnot, and I wouldn't be opposed to her being like having a skill, like to counter her just general like looping and like silly and just happiness. It's like there is like one thing she does enjoy, and it is a way for her to sort of do something more to have a profession.
I like that.
She's a teenager, so she's not like, I'm the best blacksmith in all the lands. It's
right. Yeah. You're like proficient compared to your average person, so you're useful, but you're not a master of your craft. You're a teenager, growing up, and you're okay. I like that. That's cool. So therefore, Septon Birch and Kaylee maybe have some kind of acquaintance via the mutual friend Cicero. What do we think that relationship might look like, if there is one?
I don't know. What's a teenager think of a doddering old fool who wants to talk to you? Have you heard of the seven-sided god today?
Well, if she's just like a very like nice person, she's not going to be like, spit on your gods, So I would think like, and she's curious. She's very, very curious about just things, and so I think that she'd be very like pleasant towards him. It's like,
cool.
The not as creepy old uncle.
Not as creepy old uncle.
I mean, well, like you say the uncle,
creepy old
like,
uncle. Yeah.
Probably.
You know what? In a place where you're walking around as that idiot, I'll take that as a compliment. That's like the best I can do.
Right. This is like, Septon Birch has got two friends. Like two people. Like that's two better than you had when you got here. So,
and it's the vegan kid and the random teenager. So he's doing great.
The vegan kid and the random teenager. Yeah, the likely, the easiest ones to convert. Always go for the vegans. That's the key message. I think Septon Birch took away from King's Landing. Amazing. So we're going to pivot a little bit. And one thing I think I might say is that this house, while it's in the north, maybe fairly close to the wall. And so we're talking pretty far up north, because I'd like to have Devran be involved in our story as well. So first of all, talk to us about Devran and what he's all about.
So Devran is 16. Devran was pretty lowborn, but helping out around a highborn house, and got a little too friendly with one of the young ladies of the house. Got busted and got sent to the wall, because it was basically serious consequences here, or go to the wall and we'll let it go. So keeping my head was a better plan, and so off to the wall I went, and that is where I have been. Devran is he's got kind of sandy blonde hair. He's a little Eddie Redmayne thing going on, but a little scruffier, kind of gangly, and he's kind of a goofball. He just doesn't quite have it all together.
Yeah.
The adulting thing yet.
And he's living in this like super extreme, conditions. So for those of you who don't know, the wall is this area way up to the north, and it's icy, it's horrible, and if you are a murderer or a rapist or a cow stealer or whatever crime you've committed that the lord of this land has decided you are to be punished for by death, you can take the black, and that is to join the Night's Watch upon the wall. And it's essentially a suicide mission. You're going to die on the wall, because it's better than maybe losing a hand or losing your life. You can go here, and you are enlisted in the forces of the Night's Watch to watch. And what are you watching against? Well, marauding raiders of the wildlings, thousands of which live on the other side of the wall, and of course the ancient threat, which is merely a myth at this point, of the White Walkers. So yeah, being 16 and up here for the rest of your life, maybe something that hasn't set in for Devran yet. But there are serious baddies at the wall. There are people who are there for really capital offenses. There are also the people that have sort of electively chosen to take the black, and then there are the people like Devran who are sort of in the middle. They've petty crime, and so they tend to be trusted a little bit more by various groups, and can sort of move in and out a little more cleanly than some of the more vicious brothers of the Watch. So Devran is relatively well trusted up there, and people seem to. He sort of found his place.
I think he's almost an annoying younger brother.
Right, yeah. So there's definitely a mix of those people on the wall. You do have the, genuinely convicted murderers, and, pillagers and rapists and people who, honest to God, blackguards and the worst people that you could possibly meet. And then you get, folks like Benjamin Stark, who's a ranger at this point, on the wall, who's, electively taken the black for honor and for the house, and, sees this as like a noble duty. So somewhere in between there. Now, I think our house is probably close to the wall relatively. So the nearest other settlement is around sort of last half, which I actually link everyone in chat and you guys as well to the map of Game of Thrones. It's really good, interactive. You can zoom in around and see a different place and stuff. So I'm thinking of placing us somewhere around last half, Carhold, that kind of region, which is way up in the north of the continent on the left-hand side. For that reason, I think our noble family has strong connections with the wall. So something that houses, particularly in the north, will do is send forces to the Night Watch commander. And that may be a certain amount of their own forces every year, or that may be, hey, instead of all these criminals that we've got locked up here, we're actually going to ship them all off to you guys as kind of a, get rid of our problem, but also, hey, you guys need some more soldiers because they're always dying in raids and fights or just, dying off of the cold up there on the wall. So I think our house probably has some kind of connection there. Now, there was a girl involved, Devran, who was of noble birth, who got you into this trouble. Is this someone from the north who maybe our characters are aware of, maybe just Cicero, or is this someone maybe from the south or anywhere else?
She was more southern.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm not quite equipped for the north. It's a big change. It's a very different climate than I'm used to, and I'm pretty far from home. This is unfamiliar territory for me.
Right. So, I think the rest of the party are therefore unaware of who Devran is. Have yet to meet him. You are certainly aware of the wall. It's probably a part of your not day-to-day life, but part of your existence is an awareness of what that is, and whether or not you think it's a noble cause or just a suicide mission with criminals and the worst kinds of people, it's totally up to you guys to decide. It may affect your preconceptions of when you meet Devran, if you ever become aware that he is part of the Night's Watch. It's rare that the Night's Watch will ever leave the wall. However, there are ranging missions that go southwards and northwards. Northwards beyond the wall is Death Watch, basically. Maybe you're scouting out new territories that the wildlings are encroaching upon. Southwards is more diplomacy. So the wall is always understaffed. There are never enough soldiers on the wall. So something that Sir Alice Fawn, who is one of the lead rangers at the time, and probably Benjamin Stark as well, will do is they'll take trusted people, members of the Night's Watch, and they will travel southwards to petition the lords of the north to give them more soldiers. And it's really a situation of saying, hey, we need this. And it's sort of this almost like a health service idea where we all pitch in a little bit and it makes everyone safer. We all throw in a few soldiers and a few criminals and that makes it better, although some lords are harder to convince than others. So I think at the beginning of our story we'll see it's likely that Devran will be traveling south with a contingent of the Night's Watch to enlist the aid of our noble house. And I think that will be our sort of connection. But I haven't met yet, which will be interesting. So we have a good idea about our characters. We have a little idea about where they might be in the world, but we don't know much about the house itself and the main city, town, village where we're going to find ourselves. Because a lot of the campaign is based around your noble house and the upkeep and the safety of your people. Because Cicero has a God-given right to look after these people, as do the rest of his family. And Kaylee is one of the people who he protects, and the common folk. So as a quick bit of sort of backstory, I guess, is everyone likes the lords of this family, I would say, because they follow the old ways and they look after everyone. And that's pretty much all you have to do. It's a really good deal to be a lord or a lady or any kind of noble birth because you just, tax everyone and get super rich and they all thank you for it. But as should be the way as far as everyone here is concerned. So we're going to go to chapter 6. If you guys have PDFs or anything, you don't need to have anything up. I'm going to run you through some stuff. So the cool bit about the game, one of the cool bits, is the house itself. So we're in the north, which is the first thing that we have to decide upon. The second thing we get to decide upon are the resources of the house. And this actually is a little bit of dice rolling involved here as well. So basically what you do is there is a table here, which you don't need up. We roll 76. And then I consult the table. Whatever number you get, there are pluses and minuses based on the area that you're in. So if you live in the south, you're going to be richer. So your starting resource for your house is going to be a plus 20 because the south is overflowing with wealth and gold. However, in the north, you're not looking so wealthy. However, you do have more land and things like more natural resources like mountains. So someone in the party And you know what? I should have gotten up my fancy grounds list. I'll do this in 2 seconds here. I can roll 76, and we can start doing this for real. I think I gave you guys a fancy grounds alias. I'll post it again in the Twitter chat. Sorry for being a little bit scatterbrained. Being awake for as long as I've been is not conducive to planning. But there you go.
And the fact that I write it all is amazing.
Yeah, serious.
Yeah.
Still good, still good. Something I'd love is for the chat to be a little bit involved in this as well. If you guys have ideas for stuff, we'll get into it in a minute. Because once we get the resources, we get to decide what to do with them. So once you have like a wealth score, you can say, you know what, as a team, we would like to invest in trade goods. And we'd like to have ships that go down to the south and we sell goods that way. And sort of piece by piece, we form what the house looks like. So we'll then deal with the military. We then deal with how much land we have. We spend the resources to buy troops and to buy farms, villages, that kind of thing. So we really start to flesh out a piece of land as the creation goes. So, excuse me, Bird, do you want to roll me some 76 here?
As soon as I load in, it's taking me just a second here.
Oh, sorry, I saw that you connected on Fancy Grounds. The way to do it on Fancy Grounds as well is /die space 76. So use roll 20 before it's /roll. The command is just /die. But the same principle is at stake here.
76?
76 is a way to do it. And we get to look at some stuff. All right, so this first characteristic is our defense. So the defense of our house is something that's important because it means, all kinds of things, such as, how many troops we have at our disposal. If ever the banners need to be called for our noble house, how much can we muster to defend our lands against possible raiders, wildlings, and worse. And the score is 23. And because we are in the north, we get a +5 to our defense. The north is not rich in troops, but the people are hardy here. And even someone like your own father, Kaylee, like he may be an older guy and a blacksmith, but he could take on a wildling or two in a battle, and they're fiercely loyal. So your score is 28. I'm just going to write these down, and you guys can keep track of these as well, because we get to invest these points in a little bit as well. So another 76, and this time is for our influence score. Our influence is our political standing as a house. Are we considered a important house? Are we someone that the Starks of Winterfell, the leaders of the North, may be aware of, or are we an unimportant house with very little influence? Bird, roll us those 76, my friend. There we go. Beautiful. 19. Okay, 19 is not bad. Our influence in the north is a +10 starting score. So we actually have 29 influence. The north is very important for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is the wall. Now, as I mentioned, it is this thing which we, as a community in the Game of Thrones Westeros universe, we all look to as being something which is worthwhile, defensible, and valuable. So its people are considered hardy, and you have some sway as a noble house because of this. Our next one is our lands. Now, our lands basically mean how much actual land do we own. There's a lot of space in the north. So it's another 76, and this one gets a +20 to it. So let's see what the dice gods tell us today. There we go. Oh, 29 +20. So our house has a lot of land. Now, we actually get to go into the backstory of our house, and we get to write the lore of our house in a minute. But somewhere along the way, either a grandfather, great-grandfather, or the lord of this house became very affluent indeed and conquered a lot of these lands. So you guys are going to have quite a substantial amount of territory which is under your purview. Alrighty, let's see. The next one is for our lore. So number 76, and the lore statistic essentially deals with the lawfulness in the land. How many raiders are we dealing with? What kind of banditry is in the area? Now, due to the size of these lands, we actually have a -10 to our lore starting stat. Because it's really hard to police such large pieces of land. So banditry is probably going to be a little bit more common in our house. So that was 76, my friend.
Is this me again? Am I going to be the one to blame? All right.
I think you've been designated the blame. Okay, so -10, and that's a 14 in the lore stat. So yeah. We get to consult what these mean in a second, but I think that's pretty darn unlawful, if you ask me. All right, we are over halfway through, just a couple left. So the population is the next one to deal with. So another 76. The population of the North has a -5 to it, so it's a 15, which means that our lands, while they are many, are not well populated. People are scattered about, fairly few and far between, so we're probably going to see quite a lot of villages with not so many people in them, as opposed to the super packed urban cities and town sprawls of the south. All right, our next stat is power, and power, power, my friends, it's such a good thing. Yes, I'm sorry, I was wrong before. Defense is actually about the natural defenses of the land. Power is about our armies and forces. So we actually have some really defensible lands, and that's probably due to the nature of it being so far north, is that no one is ever going to campaign up here. Even in summer, when it's wartime, getting this far up north is going to be a pain. So let's have another 76 for the power, how many forces we have. And it's at a -5, so a 23. You have a modest force of soldiers, including some trained troops. So most likely a well-trained sort of personal guard sort of house with a master of arms, master of cavalry, but nothing much more than a peasant levy force in the worst case that your house would be under siege. Last but not least is our wealth. It's very simply how much money we have and how much we can spend. So let's see those dice. And that is 26. -5. Common. Your family has enough to get by. So I think that works with what we have so far. They're not ridiculously wealthy, but they've got a little bit to throw around. So that's funny, actually. We were one away from just being poor. So well rolled on those dice. Great stuff. So to run through real quick on what the house looks like in terms of defense, you are defensible with at least one fortified town or castle. Roads and trails are present, and rivers and ports are likely. So you've got a fair amount of infrastructure and what the defense of the land looks like. For your influence, you're a small minor house. Examples include House Mormont and House Westerling. So those are examples from the lore in case you're familiar with those, but you're not unimportant in that you are likely the banner house of one of the major families. So when one of the major houses go to war, you will be called upon, and therefore your loyalty is considered important. However, you probably don't have any banner houses of your own, or if you do, they may be very small. And that being a term which might be new, banner house would be another noble house who are smaller than your own, whom you as a house protect. So it's just feudal, right? So, but instead of there just being one king that we all obey to, it's sort of broken up into smaller sections. So the north has several different major houses. They each have banner houses, and each of those banner houses probably has banner houses as well. Sounds complex? It's kind of simple, really. But there we go. Let's see what's next. Our lore. Oh yeah, that wasn't so. We are lawless. Banditry is a common problem along the fringes of our lands. So this may be something that Cicero's had to deal with in the past. Kaylee as well, you may have heard, or even fell victim to banditry in a past year or so. Septon Birch, certainly on his journey here, did not face an easy task. And certainly if Devran were to ever travel down here, that's probably more lawful than the wall is, but certainly isn't going to be a fun trip down. As for lands, a large area of land, yes, with a great deal of variety of terrain features. Population-wise, it is a small population. No single community is larger than a small town. So we've got a lot of hamlets and villages and little ports and river towns by the looks of things, but nothing which is really major aside from your main location. Okay, so that's population. Power-wise, we covered a small, modest force of soldiers, and wealth-wise, common. You got enough to get by. So that is the quick kind of character gem for the house. You can see how already we've fleshed out what our land looks like and where the area of our game is going to be being played in this fairly rural environment, thinly, sparsely populated, with a loyal but small group of people who aren't particularly wealthy and who rely upon the forces, small forces of the noble house. This is why Cicero's received, military training, because one day he would be expected to lead bands of soldiers against local bandits. The reason why there is so much banditry, because everyone is really poor, and so they turn on each other quite quickly when times are lean. So the next cool thing we get to deal with is our historical events. So our house, while our characters may be fairly young, our house is probably hundreds of years old. Maybe even thousands of years old, or it could be a very new house, but most likely it's going to be a little bit older than that. So I'll read you through a little bit of blurb for the book. So each house is a history, a chronicle of deeds and crimes that shape its identity. So this may not necessarily be the noble house we think it is. Perhaps our noble house came to be through banditry itself, and maybe they're warlords over this land that have turned into rulers, and maybe that part of their history is a little less clean than they'd like to say. So historical events provide important developments in your characters and family's history, giving you fortunes or diminishing your fortunes. Each event modifies your resources, increasing or decreasing them by the indicated value. So if you were to have had a great victory in the past, you would get to roll benefits to your defense, because you've clearly invested in infrastructure over hundreds of years and these sorts of things. So we get to roll on some more tables, my friend, which is the fun bit. So roll 3d6 once for each historical event and compare the results to this table here. So what we get to do here is roll some 3d6. So let's do that. Well, first of all, actually, I would like you guys just to tell me. We can roll on this, but I think it's more fun for us just to come up with this organically with ourselves. How old do we think our family is? Now, the broad categories are new, like super recent, recent, which is apparently older than new, established, old, very old, and ancient, which goes back to beyond the time of the age of heroes. Are we old family, or are we kind of newer, do you think? I can throw out some ideas as well if you guys want to field some opinions.
We're in like the middle, I think.
Yeah, my gut is telling me like somewhere around 4 or 5 generations.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit older because we have so much land. It would have been hard to get that very quickly.
Right, yeah. So it's maybe a slow growth of power. It may even be that you, instead of taking over these lands, just settled these lands. Like the population grew outwards, and natural growth over the course of several generations. So let's say that you're an established family. You're not going back to days of lore, but you're old enough for everyone who's like a historian to probably track that family history and to be familiar with it. So you guys get 1d6 historical events. Someone roll a d6, and this depends how many historical events we get to decide upon, which get to trace our family line.
Someone else taking that honor?
Or is Bird our designated roller?
I gotta find where we are doing this. I am ashamed to claim ignorance
It's all good.
towards.
We'll figure out the fancy grounds.
But and you can't just roll by dropping it, right? Oh, does that work?
Oh, you can?
There we go.
Yeah, that.
Ooh, look at that.
So, 3.
I'm
Excellent.
excited.
Yes. All right. So that's nice and in the middle of things. So what I'd like somebody to do now is to roll me 3d6, and we get to consult our table for our first historical event.
So I've got a 3, another 3,
All right.
and then a 4. So 10.
Alrighty.
10.
Cool. That is very nice. All right, so 10. Let's take a look. Decline.
Ah.
Dun, 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 dun. All right, decline. Let's see what this one reads. Which is sounds like a fun one. The event is decline. Your influence is reduced, as are your lands, as are your power, as is your wealth. This is terrible. This is a terrible roll. So
Sorry.
it's more than fine. It's fun because we get to figure out what this means. So whether from a poor marriage, a downturn in trade, or a series of tragic losses in conflict, your house entered a period of decline. If descent is your first role, which it is, your house was probably born from a poor marriage, a desperate lord wedding his daughter to a merchant prince, or of a major branch becoming extinct, leaving the holdings to a lesser branch to rule. Anything jump to mind there? I mean, we can write this. This is sort of the framework for an idea. Is it something which is like, oh, that could be really cool if there was a merchant prince who came along and our family history is from that, or maybe even a bandit leader. This desperate lord marries off his daughter to a bandit leader, or something like that.
I almost like that idea because our lands are like covered with banditry and everything. So maybe it got to such a bad point that it was like, listen, if we integrate some of these people in, maybe they won't attack their own. If we raise them up, maybe we will buy ourselves a little bit of safety.
If we're almost a safe haven, then
right.
They're not going to raid their own homeland. Why would they?
Right. So it's almost like a Viking sort of deal,
Yeah.
It's like, let's marry into them so that they don't kill us, like if we marry them, then they're one of us, like the blood is important to
Well, and you can tax
people
them
in this.
too.
Right, yeah, exactly. I think it sounds like this, there was a very desperate lord who's, on the losing fight from banditry maybe for years, and this one warlord, agrees to a marriage because he wants to be a noble and sees himself as, a little bit better, which is a little bit.
I like it too because like it kind of adds this tragedy that he, married him off to a warlord to end this banditry, and it still plagues the lands. So it was this total shot in the dark to try to end it, and yet it still did not work.
Right. Awesome. So if let's see, I'm just going to roll a d6 here. So your influence for this past tragedy is reduced by 6, I'm afraid. So you have 23 in that's that. Yeah, put that down. Yeah, beautiful. Okay. Lands are also reduced by 1d6, just 2. And the lands go down to 47, which isn't anything which is really too much to worry about. 47, right? Okay, and then similarly, your power and wealth both decline by 1d6. Your power goes down to a 19, and your wealth goes down to a 1, just by 1, down to 20, which actually makes you poor. I'm afraid to say. But there are 2 more historical events to figure out, which may change the fortunes of our house. So let's have another 3d6 for our second historical event.
Somebody else want to roll
From
that one?
anyone. Whoever's feeling lucky. You know, maybe we should go around and we could each do a historical event. We should each be equally to blame for this. So Jen rolled the first one. Joseph, do you want to pick up a D6, throw it into the roll here?
Someone
Or
can
just
just
pick up a real D6. That'll do.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to go break out my dice box for that.
You mean you don't have them at your desk at all times? It's crazy.
Yeah, I should carry them with me, just to make
Right.
general life decisions. Roll for initiative when I raise my hand in class and all
I
that.
have it on my watch. I have a dice rolling app.
You were going to have to send me how to get that. Good lord. So it's 1d6?
Never know. 3d6 for historical event.
3d6. Alright. We have
Right,
2
right.
ones and a 6. That makes 8.
8. All right, let's see what that is. That is. Oh no, that's a scandal. Which I love. I love the drama. So let's see what this one is.
Yeah, that was directly out of a soap opera. Oh man.
Your family was involved in some kind of disaster, a scandal that haunts them still. Good options include spawning a bastard, incest, failing conspiracies, and so on. So somewhere along this family line, you know, we had the warlord married into this desperate family, took over, and something along the line, either the warlord himself or maybe one of his sons who ended up ruling, it was involved in some kind of scandal. What kind of scandal do we think this was? Because there are a lot of good options there. That's
Yeah. Yeah, any rulebook that says a good option includes incest is really something.
Well, in the time, if you think about it, like, and they're bandits, like a Viking type.
Sure. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's
So maybe it's, we were
embarrassing, but-
discovered that we were behind the raid of a nearby
settlement.
house or
Right,
someone
right.
else's
Maybe
territory.
there's right. You know, they didn't change their ways when they became nobles, right? They're still sort of barbarians, just in finer clothing.
Drunken. Everybody's like hyped
Yeah.
up. It's like a
Yeah. They get drunk and they decide to raid the family over from them. Maybe it's you know, maybe it is one of the banner houses, you know, that they had at the time, and that's part of the decline, is that they kind of self-destructive to attack your own friends.
I don't want to say we committed the ultimate crime very early, but do we want to think about like we broke guest right somewhere? Like we were offered bread and salt, which is supposed to be the we are completely coming in peace, and that was when we like ambushed somebody. Now it's almost
Right,
we're
so-
trying to clear our name now.
Right.
Yeah,
So
we're
like
trying to be fine, upstanding.
you phrase so the welcome, like you're safe in our lands is to give people bread and salt. And so if you give like guests bread and salt, it's like, hey, you're totally cool, like there's no fighting going to be happening whatsoever, we're at peace. Like we may go to war later, sure, but like we're not going to kill each other right now. So maybe it's that thing where either through deception or just through not knowing that that was betrayed. Go ahead, Jen.
I think maybe we have to have it that someone found out that we were planning to violate guest rights, because I think it's not treachery; it's scandal. So
Right?
I
Yeah.
think before it could go off, someone found out about it.
Someone
and,
found out, and it
brought
broke.
down.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing because everyone knows, and even the people who survive, you know, even the people who were about to get, you know, killed, they know and they spread the story, right? And
Yeah.
especially if they're neighbors, that's something which people don't forget. So
Will, I almost I
yeah.
like what you were saying a
Good.
second ago, where like maybe they didn't even know like what guest right was. Like you can put a bandit in noble clothes, but that doesn't make them a noble. So here's this attack about to be launched on people who are supposed to be protected guests, and it's just like, hey, yo, we can't do this.
no,
Yeah. Offense, yo.
That's not what we do anymore. Right. And it's just sort of in their nature and just not in their education to like understand what the noble house system is there for, which, you know, in reality is to protect everyone. is because like you form friendships with the people over there because those guys have got fish and you need fish, and you guys have got swords and good fighters, and so you protect one another. But yeah, they wanted their cake and they wanted to eat it. Cool. We reduced your power, your lands, and your influence by 1, 2, and 1. So they've only been reduced a little bit from that. So it might not be a scandal which has had too much like visual effect upon what the house looks like, but certainly what people say about the house and how they feel about it will be marred. Okay, one last family tragedy, family historical event. Let's see, Kitty, do you want to roll some dice here? It doesn't have to be in Fantasy Grounds. You can just.
I've got one pulled up. So,
cool.
What am I rolling? A D6.
3d6, and we'll see what.
3.
You're looking for high. You're looking for high numbers. Should have told you this before.
Really? 10 and 8 did us well.
Okay, so I've got a 1, 5, and 4.
So 10?
So that's another 10.
Yeah, we're going to re-roll for doubles. So you get the same one twice, re-roll for a new family historical event.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's another decline.
Just a curse on our house.
Just roll another 10 as well.
You roll another 10?
Are you kidding me? Maybe the dice gods are trying to tell us something.
Okay, I got a 9 that time.
That's even worse. Okay, so this is looking like a sordid and tragic history this house has had, because 9 is a treachery. So let's see what this says. This may be, in fact, involved in our scandal. Either you suffered the results of treachery, or you were involved in committing a treacherous act. In either case, the historical event has stained your family's name. Now, that's an interesting one to think about. We've definitely had the scandal where our family almost betrayed and actually enacted the betrayal, but I didn't actually get that far. In this case, the treachery is either that they actually went through with it again afterwards, like they didn't learn at all, and like, fuck it, we're actually going to do this, 20 years later, or maybe being this noble family who don't understand politics, maybe you were the victims of a treachery. Like the houses got a little bit smart to you guys. Like, they're kind of dumb, these guys over here, and it's not necessarily a murder, right? It doesn't have to be like we killed all of them, but it could be something along the lines of like trade deals. Like, you got royally screwed over in some kind of trade deal, and now 100% of your exports go out to this other family.
This is why we weren't in the books.
Could be right.
Oh, I love the idea that we're like working from under, because a smarter house came in knowing we were essentially barbarians and just like gave us the crappiest deal on something. And so for generations, it's basically been under the thumb of a larger house, that there's just kind of this whispering, and behind closed doors, the talk of the fucking Karstarks or whatever.
Right. Yeah, we're trying to get out from under that, and there's the plan, but there's this whole new group that's going, okay, for years they've been controlling us. For years they've been, screwing us out of our money and our space and our time and our everything. And we're done. We're gonna take it back. Yeah.
Oh, imagine like how much that would be awful to like hear. Like, we're essentially dogs on a leash, like the other houses that like want to like disparage us, or just like you serve another, like, sure, you serve the king, but you serve them too.
Right. Yeah. Right.
No, I definitely like the idea of us like evolving into this barbaric warlord mindset, and being like, you know what, we deserve better.
Right.
So I definitely like where this is going.
Cool. I mean, so question for you guys as well, spitballing here. Was this the house whom you tried to betray historically? Your house was about to betray them, and they got it out, the scandal went out, and then they got a little bit wise to it and was like, you know what, we're going to get revenge, and we're going to find a clever way to screw these barbarians over. Or is this the other way around, maybe?
I kind of like it being the same house.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that
Like,
it
puts
gives
everything in
us
the
a reason to,
background.
it gives us a reason to kind of
Yeah.
elevate back up too, to like clear our name. Is like, sure, we tried to betray them, then they tricked us, and now they view that as making amends for like what we did to them.
But what they did to us was way worse. So
But yeah,
for
it's like
sure.
the punishment that you're like enduring lasts forever, right? Like this is probably some kind of deal or like treaty which was signed for like 100 years or something like that, because that's how these trade negotiations often wind up, and either through deceit or maybe the former rulers didn't understand what they were getting themselves into again. They extended the olive branch of friendship only to betray you. And now I think, you guys are under the thumb. However, that does mean that your power has gone up. And I think the probably reason for that is that you guys have been training soldiers because you do not want to get burned again, right? It's like, if ever there's a fight, those guys over there are going to get it.
what if they did something to one of the kids of the house or something?
Oh yeah, because that's a great way to pivot actually into Cicero's more recent event.
I think. Like, what if there was like a daughter or something who got taken and they harmed her in some way before they gave her back, almost a ransom?
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. Cicero, you have probably a sister. So the unfortunately, where we live in, the daughters are less important than the sons as far as the house are concerned, because they will not become heirs unless all the sons are dead, in which case then you can become the lady and run a house. It's possible, like Lyanna Mormont of the Mormon household is doing that. But yes, to harm the son, certainly the first or second son, would be a grievous insult. You could possibly like want to go to war over something like that, but possibly if they did something to a daughter of the house, this is still a personal wound and an embarrassment to the house, but maybe not something that you could like call the banners for. So maybe if this other house have
and it might be something they would like try and cover up too,
right?
Because you wouldn't want to let anyone know that this happened,
right? Yeah,
or something.
So, yeah, I'm imagining her being, if like this is something that's happened in recent history.
Yeah.
Or okay, so I would even imagine her being like kept away in the castle, in her own private quarters. No one has seen her in years, and she's just kind of rumored about, and there are things going around about her, but no one knows if she's even alive.
I
she
like,
can be disfigured.
I like keeping it
like
ambiguous as well as to exactly what happened. Like, I think maybe Cicero doesn't even know. And like, there was certainly like some foul play at hand as to what exactly happened. But it has been covered up by the Lord and Lady of the house, I think, because they are embarrassed by it. They don't want us to get out, and they also want to protect her because she's their daughter. So as things stand, those are historical events. You guys rolled tragically on them, but it's great. We had a decline, we had a treachery, and we had a scandal. So this checkerboard pattern of our house's history is quite interesting, and will form the characters and their relationships with the house and who they are at the moment. So as things stand, our scores have changed. Our defense is 28. Which means I'll go back to consult to see if that has changed anything overall. But I don't think it has. Our defense is defensible with at least one fortified town or city. This is probably like a Motte and Bailey castle that is the central home and hub of your lands. Our influence has gone down to 17. So our influence is okay, yeah, so it's gone down to the lower status. So the lord of this land is not necessarily of noble blood. He is a greater landed knight. So that means, and this actually works quite well into our history of he's not of noble blood. They're not, noble bloodlines doesn't go back to the Andals. they're warrior kings, essentially, who have been since made into knights. And basically what that means is, like, you get land. Is if you're a good soldier or a good knight, you're given land. Now, this may have been done retroactively by, the Karstarks or whoever. And, some point along the line, you were granted a title of knighthood rather than just these barbarian kings over here who are ruling in the north. Like, come into line, we'll give you a knighthood, and this is how we make this, like, legitimate. Let's see. Our next score is our lands, which is 49, so we still have a lot of lands. Our law has gone down to 14, but we're still in the same zone of lawlessness. This may be encouraged by the family's history. Now, I like the idea, as to throw one at you guys, see if you like this as well, is what if there are a group of people who are kind of like of this old bandit bloodline who aren't like nobles, but like remember that way of life, like maybe they're mountain people, they're like the mountain folk of this area, and they're on your side, but things are a little rocky because they don't maybe accept the rule of law that has been granted. They don't accept this whole knighthood bullshit. They think it's dumb. And they think that they should still be able to raid and pillage these lands around them because they're the strongest. So we could give that force more of a face rather than just like random bandits.
Yeah, that's somewhere in like the entry material too. It talks about the random clans that still rove the north that aren't part of any house, who will sometimes go to war for houses, but still like are their own independent factions. So that's perfect.
Right.
Their terrible roles worked out for a great story.
yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about the house system, is that it all kind of connects quite well and makes a little story if you put some pieces together. Joseph, you had something to jump in on that one with?
Yeah, I think them residing in specifically our area is would be a neat little thing, because they know that they're safe within kind of the boundaries of the kingdom, that we have a small army based on the amount of land that we have. Like, the proportion is a little bit off, but they know if they were to go elsewhere, they would face a force that is, once they got onto a smaller kingdom or a smaller township, they'd be facing a force that would not necessarily welcome them.
Right.
So they're kind of enjoying the safety that we offer, and there's kind of a mutually understood thing where we don't mess with you, you don't mess with us. Right.
They probably call themselves by your family name as well. They consider themselves like the OG, right? They're like, no, we're the real like bloodline of that family. Sure, those guys can call themselves knights and whatever, but it's not of interest to us. Cool. That works out pretty well. Our population is still 15. That didn't get changed. So we have a small population, but scattered. No more than a single community is larger than a small town, so we've pretty got a few of them. Okay, and
this was a quasi that there was so much migration in this area. What if we did our theology partially based on like the Roin?
Yeah. Okay.
There's some interesting lore in there that I think fits this.
Right. That's probably works quite well timeline-wise as well, right? So, so the Roinar invasion is technically old, but I think that would work fine for us. What do you think your angle is there for the house's history?
I mean, I think there's the pantheon is really interesting there. Mm-hmm. Mother Roin really kind of there's a lot of intrigue kind of happening in that, and this idea of a highly developed culture that's not necessarily viewed as such, which I think is something that our house would cling to. That would be viewed as these uncivilized louts, and that's not at all what's going on. It's that they're just not understanding what's working. Right, yeah. I definitely like that. I think that's something for us to explore. And I actually am going to need to do my history on the Roinar invasion as well, and I can
come up with some more ideas and pitches for you guys on that as well. But I definitely think that'd be interesting. The more connections we have for our house, I think the better, because then there's just more for us to play off of.
Yeah, they're mostly in one, so that's
right.
Sort of.
Yeah. Our power has increased to 26. It doesn't change the description of it, but it is more points to play with. And then our wealth has gone to 20, so just down to 1. However, unfortunately, that puts us in the poor category rather than in the common. So we only reduced it by 1, but that's just enough. Your family has little excess. While they're able to sustain themselves and their holdings, they do not live in luxury. So it's probably quite a simple lifestyle for Cicero and his family. Some point we should put a name to this house, but we don't have to right now. I think Joseph had an idea for the name, actually, and I've forgotten what it was. I wrote it down.
Yeah, it's just arbitrarily McNair. There's no meaning behind it. I just thought it sounded cool. But yeah, whatever. I'll send that in the Twitch chat just for a little spellsy
you can throw some ideas, can't you? McNair. Yeah, that can work on a couple of ways, because I think it's not a traditional sounding northern name, which you guys sticks you out as a little bit of a sore thumb as your heritage. And if McNair isn't a noble name, so it's probably that like slightly bastardized, like not really like common. It's not like that dialect of the mountain folk, the barbarians from which you come from, and McNair, that sounds more sort of Irishy than it does sort of Scottishy, and that maybe is quite a cool distinction to have, where it's like those guys have that weird name, and if anyone were to look into it, they would see why. You can trace the name back to and what if McNair was actually just the guy's name, like this warlord's name? It's not like it's just his first name, because he wouldn't have a second name. He's probably just some masterboard warlord called McNair, and then it kind of just caught on from there. And they're like, oh, we just call him McNairs now. Yeah.
I love the idea that like they're going to be introduced and they're like, Lord McNair. Well, what's your full name? No, it's just Lord McNair. McNair is my like only name.
That's it. McNair. Cool. Very cool. So the next thing we have to do, and it's pretty much the last thing we'll do tonight, is put together our holdings. So these scores, misspoke so much. Thanks so much, my friend. Crit success for all the players. Also, can I recommend the stoat as a house animal or symbol? It's a crafty animal that thrives well in the cold winter, but some may see them as weasels. I like that. That's kind of cool. What do you guys think of a stoat as like part of the family emblem? It doesn't have to be the whole, emblem, but maybe you guys are a little crafty. The McNair heritage is. I'm
gonna look one up because I have no idea what they look like.
They are like weasels, basically.
Okay.
I think they somewhere between a weasel and something else. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, they're cute. I dig it.
I dig it. How about it? Thanks for the suggestion. Okay.
Rabbit, first video that comes up of a stoat.
Good. I think they maybe eat other little animals. I didn't remember. Ferret weasels, yeah, ferret weasels. There we go.
That's kind of a cool idea too, because it's the north. So there's dire wolves, there's bears, but because we're this tiny family who like are a total second thought, of course we're a weasel.
Yeah.
I could see even a fox or something like that. Like still a lesser animal in the food chain, but like crafty, something that But no, I'm digging this. The stoat is.
Because it does not face any significant threat to its survival, so it's classified as least concern, and yet at the same time it was nominated as one of the world's top 100 worst invaders.
Wow.
That's
interesting.
I think that's
you guys. Top 100 worst invaders. The McNair family. Top 10 anime betrayals. Yeah, I like that. That kind of fits quite well. Oh, but yeah, it could be that it's like a fox and a stoat, and they're like in battle or something like that. For like the emblem could be cool. But I think there's some kind of like the enemy household, or the household has betrayed you in the past, and who you're at odds with, probably call you weasels, right? Like they refer to you guys as the weasels, and that's part of your shame, is that you're like put under the boot of these people who call you weasels and who have betrayed you. And yeah, you guys made mistakes in the past, but you're not the same as your ancestors. You're more like the clever fox, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hope to be, but no, any room for insult is definitely going to be fun to play out.
Cool. Honey badger, I like that. A squirrel is the best option, clearly. Alrighty, let's see then. So
it does not dig its own burrows. It instead uses the burrows and nest chambers of the rodents it kills. This is us. Whoever came up with that, you're a genius.
This is making more sense.
Yeah, it all confirms everything we've done. Great stuff. Okay, cool. So the next and last thing we have to do is our holdings. So we have these scores, and they're resources, they're pools which don't get spent usually. They can be spent, but they are also invested. So you will put points into castles, into halls, towers, that kind of things. When they are destroyed, you will often lose those points, but not all the time. So if you just decide to abandon the tower, you wouldn't lose all your points. You could invest them elsewhere and redirect them. Now, this part of the game is every 3 months of in-game time. We roll like a fortune roll, and it's very similar to the house events, and it's basically like, is there a famine, or is it a very good yield of crop? Are our soldiers being well trained? Your actions in the game affects the kind of fortune rolls. So if you've won a battle, you're going to get a +10 to the military roll, fortune, that kind of thing. So we get to invest in our holdings. Now there's a lot of them. If you do have the PDF, it would be handy to have it up, but it's not something which is necessary, because I can read through the kind of basic options. It doesn't really get too complex, because you actually don't have too many points to spend. So for defense, with our score being of 28, we can invest as many points as we want, and we can save as many points as we want to later invest. So once you've invested them, you can't reallocate them until some kind of major restructuring goes on, where you're like, we're going to tear down a tower, and all the bricks from that tower we're going to use in this hall, which usually takes a year of in-game time. But because the game plays as such, we will be passing through a lot of time, so don't worry too much about making a huge mistake here. It's usually pretty simple. So with defense of 28, the top one is investment of 50, which is a superior castle with stone walls, a massive stronghold like Harrenhal. No way you guys can build that or have ever built that. A castle is 40 points, which is an impressive fortified stronghold. A small castle, unfortunately, is 30 points. So we can't quite get a small castle, but what we can get with 20 points is a hall. A hall or a keep, which is essentially like a Mott and Bailey hall, is pretty much like the central hub of defense of what you guys would be able to invest in for that. Now, 10 points is a tower, so there's a couple of things that we can decide upon, because you have 28 and it's so slightly awkward not able to get a tower and a hall sort of thing. A couple of things you could make. My suggestion would be to definitely get some kind of keep or hall, because you need some kind of defense in this horrible, horrible world. However, you could just invest in a tower, leaving yourself with 18 points, wait for some fortune rolls and some good luck, and then invest in a small castle. Or you could go completely balls to the walls and say, we don't have any kind of fortification, we're saving all 28 of our points for the next roll, and we're going to roll good, and then we're going to get a small castle. Which I would let you do. Normally they take 20 months to build, but if you wanted to go that route, I'm happy to say it was there, or it's finishing completion and you're waiting for it to be finished. However, probably a good idea to have a hall, save up a couple of points, and then invest in a tower later down the way, which you can like expand upon in the hall.
The hall kind of really fits like everything that we've been going about through, like so that like a barbaric sort of Viking-y having a hall versus like this grand.
Right. It's the case where this is probably this ancient hall that the McNair himself set up as like his old like fort, and it's like that's where we rule now, and it's kind of been built upon since then, but it still has that like, wow, this thing is kind of built like a piece of shit, but it's been upgraded over the course of like 100 years or so and made into a more modern northern construction. So it's a little bit like how you'd get some like in England, you get some like native buildings that Romans would then build upon, and then you get some like interesting looking foundations and buildings going on. So I like the kind of motif of tribality.
If we do a hall, can we have some tunnels underneath? We have some secret tunnels.
Certainly
underneath.
you can. Yeah, certainly you can.
Yeah, because I think we would.
Right, it's like that.
Oh hell yeah!
It's like that stoat thing, right?
Yeah,
They're
not our tunnel, but we use them.
The Stoats Stoat Hall. I
love this. I'm gonna end up like by the end of this, we're all going to be stoat experts and pulling out random stoat facts because we've informed the whole story.
I go to lunch with my friends tomorrow and be like, "Have you heard about stoats?"
Right, I know an interesting amount of knowledge about them. All of a sudden, yeah. Cool thing is, units defending a hall, we'll get to units in our power one real quick, but they get a +4 bonus to their defense. So a hall is defensible, and actually a castle only gets a +6 bonus to their defense. So you're actually doing pretty well. Like, it's not a huge difference between having a hall and a small castle. And the cool thing is as well is I would totally let you guys invest points to just upgrade it to a small castle. It would take you time, but it's not something that you have to like, okay, we've built, it's not like in a video game where like, oh, I've built one building here and now it goes red when I try and place another building, on top of it. Like, I can't do that. You can totally build up on things, which is cool. So our next one is our influence holdings. Now, our influence holdings essentially are heirs. How many heirs do we have? Now, so we have firstborn sons, which are 20, second son, which is 10, and other children, which don't include bastards, which is 5. So our influence is 17. So we have this kind of backstory with you being this thirdborn son to like this sort of noble line. I like there being maybe you're the secondborn, if you wanted to stick with that, or if you wanted to let the dice tell the story and say, actually, you know what, maybe I am the firstborn son, because we didn't previously know how influential our house is, and maybe because it's from this sort of, actually, you guys are just basically, you're the son of a knight, you're not the son of like a great lord. Maybe that sort of investment in sons is something which hasn't been like looked into so much because it's just seems less important. I'm totally happy to fudge a little bit as well. If you would like to be the, stick with the backstory and say, actually, I'm like the third-born son of this house.
You know what? I am, if there's dice rolling involved and there's something left up to chance, I will go for it. Because why not? Let's see where this takes us.
Awesome. Okay, let's do that. And so you're the firstborn son of this place. You do have 5 points for a second-born son, or
so we said there was another child, right? That had been.
Yes.
Yes,
sure? There is another child is 5. So you could have So it's you and your sister,
Okay.
who are the only real 2 children of this. Maybe there's a bastard going around. It may be less frowned upon to. That could be it. Maybe it's that you have these other brothers, but they're actually bastards, and maybe that's a little bit more accepted in your lands because it's not a great shame. Whereas in Winterfell, Jon Snow is something of an embarrassment, because they are the great family of the North. Where you guys come from, it's kind of a little bit backwater, and like bastards maybe aren't, kids born out of wedlock. Maybe that's more commonplace in the McNair household. Again, that could tie into.
Don't care anymore.
Right, this is don't give a shit.
It couldn't get worse.
Yeah, right. We need to look up some stoat breeding facts. Do they mate for life?
I don't believe they do, and I saw something about that they defend their burrows from the other.
It all fits.
And hang on, let me go back to the article.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go based off of what other things they do and say no. They don't sound like a very friendly bunch.
Right. Cool. I like the sound of that. Now, our land holdings, let's see, give us some terrain features. So this describes forests, lakes, hills, mountains, coastlines, and more. Each domain is roughly a league, which is 3 miles. Your domains reflect only those lands that are under direct control and not under the control of your banners, your sworn knights, and others in your service. Now, as a side note, I believe Steel Rain is going to be playing a sworn knight of the McNair household, meaning that he is probably landed with his own territory, probably a village, which you guys have given him, and say, listen, you're an awesome knight, and you've probably won some kind of honor, maybe you won a tournament, and you are going to defend this territory of land for us, and if we call the banners, you and your guys come and fight for us, but if you're in trouble, we go and fight for you as well. So that's something to note. So if you want, I'll break this down for you. So if you want some hills, hills cost 7. And to remind you guys, you have a lot of land. You have 46 points in land, so there may be a little bit of noting you guys want to do here. Now, hills are 7, mountains are 9, plains are 5, wetlands are 3. So an example that they have of the North is consisted of hills, mountains, plains, and wetlands. Okay, so that's basically what it's made up of. And so each of those are domains, which are 3 leagues. So that's how that's broken down. The domains are the first part, and within those domains, there are features. Okay, and these features are a coast, like a shoreline where you can bring in goods and ships. There's communities. So communities are broken down into hamlets, small towns, large towns, small cities, large cities. Features also include grasslands, an island, a road, a ruin, and then you've got streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, and then you have woods, and those are simply broken up into light and dense. Now, I won't go into all of the point costs of each of those. I think it's easiest if you guys tell me what you think there might be, and then I can just run through and we can do a little quick bit of jotting down. So the domains are the first thing for us to think about, the terrain itself. The examples are hills, mountains, plains, and wetlands. Now, hills are 7, mountains are 9, plains are 5, and wetlands are 3. Now, bear in mind that with this cost of 46, that is both for terrain and for features in that terrain. Now, you could just have a wetlands with nothing in it, and it's just a wetlands which is there, which you can later build upon. Similarly, you could put coastal communities in this wetlands, and then we start to build up, once we've done that, like the names of these villages and the names of these towns and who lives in them and who works in them. So it's once again just sort of fleshing out what our territory looks like, because we're going to spend a lot of time in it. The other thing as well worth noting is that you can expand later on in the game when you get more land points, and you can invest and say, you know what, we're going to expand out another 3 miles into this new league of territory that we're going to open up in this mountain over here. Or we're going to build this coastal town that we've been trying to thrive and prosper. So what do you guys think in terms of that? It seems like there might be, a little mountainous from what we've spoken about before with these tribesmen, maybe.
I'm definitely for some mountains, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm just looking at the the map, like the actual Game of Thrones map. I don't know how
Right.
closely we want to stick to that, but we could be a little bit to the, what's that? That's the west of West Perth.
Yep, that's pretty mountainous, right? There's that long ridge of mountains which run down the western side of the north up there.
There's a little river that snakes up there too. We could
Yeah, I
be
think
around
some rivers would be really cool.
because it goes right up through into it.
So yeah, I mean that's cool because that means that it's easier to travel, right? Like you can take a river barge down and get places. And that's, you know, we can also start thinking about, all right, well, once we have your territories, where in this this area is this noble family that's got you under the thumb? You know, like, is there a river which connects you or a road? You know, that kind of thing, or maybe a ruin. Yeah. Okay, so we definitely want some mountains. We're definitely liking the sounds of some rivers which run down from that mountain. So rivers are in features, and a river is just free. So we can get ourselves a river for just 3 points, and we can say that runs down from the mountain through the hold, close to where you guys are at. Makes sense that you'd be close to a water source. And that river runs all the way down across and connects you to these various different communities and allied houses. Okay, we've got a river and we have some mountains. The other suggestions were plains. Sorry, go ahead.
When you say ruins, my mind is going to the previous quote-unquote lords of the lands that may have potentially existed and were overthrown. That might be a little fun to invest in. Maybe some things happen there that aren't too savory.
Yeah, I mean, a ruin is 3 points, so you can actually, a ruin is just whatever, small chump change. So what this ruin could be,
why not?
Right? Yeah, what this ruin could be is definitely, that's the old hold of the warlord before he made his true, stronghold here, wherever we end up calling the hold. So that's definitely something that would be cool, and also it's something to build upon in the future. It may even be slightly defensible, or it may be the place that bandits set up, in this old ruin. It could be the home of our tribe of bandits who are semi on our side, but also a little bit not.
I like that.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to turn a ruin into a tower or something like that at some point if we'd eventually reclaim it.
Yeah. You can convert it.
What was destroyed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just like a stoat. Just like a stoat.
You guys, you got to go read this Wikipedia about stoats. It's fascinating. I put some Irish mythology about the stoats in the chat a second ago, but it's pretty amazing. It's spot on for us too.
Good.
It's amazing.
Good. I love it when things make sense.
To encounter a stoat when setting out for a journey was considered bad luck, but one could avert this by greeting the stoat as a neighbor. Poison saliva
with bread and salt.
Yeah,
I like that. Cool. All right.
Noxious
so we got
animals
this
prone to thieving. I mean, it sounds just like us.
Sounds up. You're right. You guys have it up your alley. So we've got a mountain. We've got a river that runs down from a mountain. We've got a ruin. Now, is that ruin in this mountainous region, or is that maybe in a hills that run down from the mountain, or is that in like the wetlands, which is a sort of lower area, maybe close to closer to the sea?
Maybe we should think about where our main town or city or whatever we're calling our hall is. Is our main hall in the mountains near the rivers or in the hills, do you think?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at which side of the mountain range do we want to be? Do we want to be on the inland side, or there's the side that's more towards the coast?
I think that that big river, the last river that runs down there. If you guys are somewhere close to last half, but over to the west, it's kind of this blank region first of all, so we can do whatever we want with it.
Sure.
But also, I think makes a fair bit of sense that you guys might be in there, this mountainous region, which has probably some foothills at the least, and it looks like runs into some kind of woods here as well. But again, this map isn't everything. You know, we will restructure this map as so you guys desire. It would make sense to put a castle, you know, a hall somewhere in a mountain, maybe, but also maybe in the hills. You know, classic. Put your castle on top of the nearest hill. And keep in mind that each of the domains, the mountains, the hills, the plains, and the wetlands are 3 extra miles of territory that you guys own. So they are your sort of like, you know, your base tiles that you're laying down, and on top of them you put your features. So, you know, you could say, oh, we've got like 10 wetlands, and you've got this like huge territory that you rule over. Not much in it, but that's something you can do. So yeah, feel free to jump in. It sounds like maybe some hills.
For sure. Yeah. Hills are nice.
For that. Do you guys want to put your hold in the hills, or do you want to put it in the mountain?
I feel like maybe it's kind of up near the mountain, but still in the hills.
And in the hill, yeah. So like in the foothills of the mountains, it's right. It's not Helm's Deep, but it's like Edoras, right? It's certainly the mountain range is right behind it, but you're not actually technically in the mountains. Yeah, okay, I like that. So we've got hills and our castles in that. So we've currently spent 12, 15, 22 of our 46 investments. So we've got just about double more to spend on. So we've got features to build as well. So we've currently our only features are a river and a ruin. We're probably going to want some kind of town, or at least a village. So communities, a hamlet costs 10, a small town costs 20, a large town is 30, a small city is 40, and a large city is 50. So it's probably either a hamlet or a small town is what we're going to be looking at for our land investment. What do you guys think on that one?
I could see small town, certainly if it's attracting people like Septon Birch and Kaylee, our blacksmith. I think, and if the Night's Watch are coming through there looking for troops, it seemed like some place that's got a decent amount of people in it.
Right, and you know, it's likely if it's an old place that a town has grown up around the castle, as is often the case. So it's like there's this one big protected place. People come to it over the generations and start building houses just outside of it. So when bad guys come, you run to the castle. Or the other way around, the castle is built to defend the people. But I think, it sounds like a small town is...
I love the idea of like this makeshift town showing up around the hall, essentially. So it's completely scattered different styles of architecture and foundations and building types, because it was just people like plopping down land that was near the lord of the land to protect them.
Right. But there's also something cool about the idea that if things hit the fan, that everybody from those areas comes to the mountains and sort of forms this impenetrable wall of it's the only time everyone actually comes together in this community.
Right,
when the threat is so big that it's threatening everyone there.
Right. That makes perfect sense to me, why that would be there. So that, I believe, is 42 points. We've got 46 to invest. So we've got 4 flying around. There's not so much we can do, at least, but there's a couple of things. A coast. So just a coastline where you guys, maybe it's just past the mountains. If we're on the western side, you guys have got a coast that you own, like a territory that you own that you can sail out to that way. And then you've also got this big river which runs down across the north and basically cuts across it. And let's say that your river runs into the last river. So you've got like a tributary of this, this big major river which cuts its way through the north, and yours sort of connects to it. So you've got like easy access to travel and for defense there. So a couple of things that don't cost much. A road is 5 points. I'd jam it and let you guys have the road. A grasslands is 1 point. A light woods is 3 points, and that might be one of the last things you wanted to think about. Is like a woods, maybe. A dense wood is 5. A light wood is 3. I don't really think they give too much difference in terms of what they yield you. but it might also be like a production thing, right? Like, you know, there are woodsmen who exist because you guys are, you know, tribesmen and barbarians turned sort of these folk who like live off the land. Yeah, so what do you guys think? They've got like option for woods, a road, some grasslands, or a coast, or some combination of the two.
I kind of think we should forego the road, because the whole thing about Westeros is there's like the King's Road, is that what it's called? The major road that goes through all these cities. And basically, like, we have not earned the King's Road to come our way yet, because we're not that legitimate of a house yet, or that important of a house yet. Sure, we exist and export goods, but we're still not legitimate in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, the river sounds like it would provide adequate transport for stuff,
especially since it connects to the last river.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
So if there were woodsmen, I do like that idea, because if one of our main exports is lumber, they just bring the logs on down to the river, toss them in there, and
toss them in, send them down.
Going.
Yeah,
and sell them off. And maybe if that is your main export, maybe that's how you're getting screwed by this other family. And all of your exports, because it's along this big long river, the last river, at some point there's like some kind of checkpoint, or like their port where you have to go through and you get taxed. You get nickel and dimes, and it's a ridiculous, exorbitant fee, but you have to take it because that's your only way to sell this shit. You're not going to want to sell it. You're not going to want to send ships, off the coast and all the way down and around. Like, the only real way to do it is through this river, and they control the river. I like that as being like something that was signed away, or like land that was agreed upon, like this checkpoint, like this bend in the river belongs to this other family, and that was sold away. And that's, one of the reasons why you guys are getting screwed, basically, is through that. So I think that's 45 points. We have a mountain range, which has probably our ruins in it, like the old hold of this warlord McNair, which is kind of been abandoned now, but maybe there's something to be used in there. That's where the old tribe that call themselves the real McNairs, the real McCoys, hang out, and probably commit a little bit of banditry every now and again, stir up some trouble. Then we have this hills range, which runs down, this foothills from the mountains, from which runs this river, where our town and our castle, our hall are. And this area is also fairly well wooded as well, which is our main export of lumber, which feeds together quite nicely with that. I'm conscious of time, so we're going to blast on through. Let's see, our population holdings. So with law and with population, you don't invest resources. You can, via your role-playing actions, like if you defeat bandits, then you're gonna your law holdings are gonna go up, like your increase of your law score will increase. And similarly with population, this is just something which is on our house fortunes. Every 3 months, we either see an increase or a decrease depending on that. Our power holdings, I think, are the second. Actually, the last thing that we need to do today. Sorry, aside from wealth, there are two more. Which are power and wealth. Power is broken up into a couple of things. How much power do we have? I think it's 26 power that as a team we have. So a banner house costs 20 for your first banner house. After that, a second banner house costs 10, and after that, they have 5. And this is something which then, I actually will create the starting resources, the first founding, and the house fortunes of them as well. And I'll, all together we can do that, but probably because we're going to start next week, I'll roll it up in between now and then and consult with you guys in a couple of bits. What's up, Slutty Awesome? Welcome, my friend. So that's a banner house, and these guys are not blindly obedient, but they are loyal to you. Now, this might be a family whom you saved before and then knighted as well, or this may be locals who you have knighted yourselves and you think are like a family worthy of more status. It could be probably not a local warlord knowing you guys, but it could even be some influential merchant whom helped with the lumber, who you're trying to secure control with by making them knights and saying, you're our banner house now. Hey, you owe us loyalty, so you're going to help us out here. There are other things that you can invest power into as well, which is, of course, also your military. So banner houses are expensive at 20 points for your first one, after which they get less and less. But with only 26, something to keep aware of is that your units, which are your soldiers, cost points as well. Now, I do not intend to run the full warfare rules from this book, because honestly, it's a bit like playing Warhammer tabletop, where you're like moving pieces across the battlefield. We're going to handle all that stuff narratively, but it is cool to know what forces you have at your disposal so that we can describe battles and figure out how you guys would actually do. So there are two things to be aware of. There are the units themselves, and then there is the training of the units. It costs power to buy or invest in the unit, and it also costs power to train them. So the real simple version of this is that most troops cost somewhere from 1 to 5. 1 is really basic. 5 is really like heavy cavalry or like personal guard. The one that is 0 is levies, and that's the interesting one. So you can actually have a standing force of a lot of levies. They cost you nothing in your power. However, they are terrible and require a lot of training. The base units, you have archers, which cost 3. You have criminals, which cost 1, so you can actually hire criminals. And they're a little bit like the Night's Watch, but a little bit better. Now, this might be the real McNairs that you guys hire on, basically as mercenaries, and say, "Hey, we're gonna take some of you guys, and then you're gonna come with us." And then we have, let's look, a garrison. It's like garrison troops. So your standard guard force costs 2 points. Trained infantry men, like equipped soldiers with swords and shields and like chain mail and that kind of thing, would cost you 4. So those are the ones that I'm going to deal with right now. There are more. There are also scouts, which cost 2, which might be something that you guys would want to be tracking, as if you're woodsmen, you might have a fair amount of scouts as well. So it's really archers at 3, criminals at 1, garrison troops at 2, infantry at 4, peasant levies at 0, scouts at 2, for that. And then training, I know it gets a little bit complicated, and I promise this will be the last math we have to do tonight. Green is what they come with, so they're all green. Every unit that you hire is at least green, which means that they're pretty bad, but they can fight. Trained is your average, like they don't have any minuses or bonuses. And then you have veterans, and then you have elite. So it's very unlikely that you have anything that is above trained, because the power cost to train a unit is 3. So if you have peasant levies, it costs 0 to have all of them, but you could train, a bunch of them for 3, 6, 9, whatever you wanted with that. I think the only thing to be aware of with the peasant levies is that it reduces your population resource by 2. So the more levies you have, the less population you have as well, because you're just literally getting peasants and saying you're going to fight for us. So there's that. You've got the banner houses, which might be a little bit out of what you want to do at 20 with only 26 points to invest. And then there's some division of soldiers that you'd like, depending on how much soldiery you'd like to have at the house. Which seems, with its background, it may have a criminal element. And it may have this slightly more trained garrison force, maybe some scouts, that kind of thing. Did anything jump out at you guys when I was monologuing through that?
And you did a beautiful job too. I guess, maybe a few, like one group of people who are like the good ones. I definitely see like maybe a hound type figure to this house, just kind of a gritty, battle hardened person that's just kind of shown up and been like, I need a place to stay and I'll fight for you.
I actually think that may be Steel Rain's character. I think he may be
Okay.
something of a hound.
Nice.
And you won't have to invest in that, but that's something just
Beautiful.
to keep track of. You won't need to spend any points in because he's a player character. They come free.
I mean,
It kind of sounds like whatever we get, we would invest some money into training because we had talked about earlier, because of us being screwed over, that we like are actively training ourselves so it never happens again, or if it does, we can retaliate. So
Right.
whatever we go with, I wouldn't mind throwing some points into training them.
yeah, well, and I think gorillas might be something we would look into because we are in
Right.
specialized terrain.
Right.
That
So
makes
yeah, that's
sense
another
to
one.
me that we need someone
Yeah.
who can fight in mountains. So
Yes. So yeah, you could definitely have this sort of guerrilla force. They cost 2, so they're similar to scouts in that regard. They are really good in the territory that you're fighting in. So like defensively in the mountains, you know how to fight there. But if you were to invade, they're like not good on like a pitched battlefield. Guerrillas are, lightly armed, not trained in the art of, pitched battles and following orders, that kind of thing. So yeah, let's throw in at least a unit of guerrillas into this because that definitely sounds like something you guys in your background have going. So let's throw in and that's cost 2. Just get gorillas cost 2. However, they're green, so they don't really know how to fight at this point. So would we like to train our gorillas for an additional 3 points?
how many points do we have to
Sure.
spend?
Wait, yeah,
We
we
have 26 points to spend. So if
Okay.
a trained unit of gorillas would cost 5. So you could have 5 units of trained gorillas, or some combination of gorillas, garrison, that kind of thing.
I mean, I think if we're going to get specialized forces, we might as well have them trained, right? At least have one
Right.
one unit of super skilled defenders here.
Right. Let's have this group who you guys can rely on, who are there to fight to the last in these mountains. So that would just cost you 5 to train this unit of gorillas who are now essentially adept fighters. They could easily stall an army for a while if it wasn't a huge force. That's 5. You've got 21 points left to spend. Do we want just like a garrison force that you guys can like throw into the hall and say, you guys are okay? But
Yeah, I think so.
yeah. So the cool thing about having a hall is that it actually gives them bonuses, even if they're not trained. So that's the advantage of throwing a garrison force in there pretty cheap. And like, you don't have to be trained to not be able to get killed by an arrow because you're standing behind a wall is the idea behind it, basically. So even Hamas, son of whoever, if he has a good sword, he'll be all right. He can throw some stones down the Urukai. All right, so that's 7. We've got math left to spend 19 points. It actually seems like quite a lot. You guys could get a fair bit. You could even have a unit of cavalry for 5. This perhaps horse unit who can scout and range for you guys and gives you some mobility on a battlefield and in general to be able to say to me, hey, Will, Cicero, I'm the first son and I'm going to send out this unit of riders and I want to know what's going on the borders of my territory. And I want them to patrol this area here. That could be useful. Or you could do that with a unit like a scout unit.
yeah, I think given our interest to bolster the forces to be able to defend ourselves, that definitely seems like it's within our best interest to do.
Okay, so let's go for a cavalry unit then for 5. We're going to train them. We're going to keep them green.
How much is it to train them,
Train
and how
is
much
3
do we get
points. So
left?
it'd be cavalry is 5. You've got 19 points all in all. To spend this would leave you with 11 points left to have trained cavalrymen. Now, something worth note is that sometimes better disciplined soldiers are better than a lot of undisciplined soldiers.
Yeah.
The training also dictates how likely they are to stay and fight with you. Which is to say, if you hire criminals that who are green, they're not going to stick around if things get tough. Like, they're here for a fight they're going to win.
Yeah, they go with the best money. So
exactly,
yeah,
they could be paid off. Yeah. So sounds like we're leaning towards training our cavalry.
Let's train them up.
So
Yeah, heck yeah.
let's train them up. That leaves us with 11 points left. We've got a guerrilla force who can range and defend our home. We've got a garrison unit who are basically just there. And we have a trained cavalry force who are probably your guys' is like elite as far as that goes. Like they're the shock troops, the pride and joy of the master of horse in this place.
Do we want archers because we're in kind of a hilly, mountainous keep that we can, if people come to attack us, we can like rain down arrows on them?
Throw them into the hole.
That was jumping out at me. So
right, yeah. This sort of unit of archers who maybe Cicero trains with or has trained since maybe taking command of as the firstborn son. I think it's probably more likely that it's like, okay, you guys, you're the firstborn son, like you want some responsibility, lead these guys and learn how to lead.
Okay.
And so that's 3. Do we want to train them, which is 6 and leaves us with 5 points, or leave them untrained, which leaves us with 8 points?
So if we train them, we can still get a unit of trained scouts, right? We would have enough for scouts. Maybe that's how we finish it off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do that.
Perfect. I'll make note of that. So we've got trained scouts as well, who probably work with the guerrilla forces in this area. And, this is probably one of the things that keeps you guys, or keeps the other house on their toes a little bit. The knowledge that they may be screwing you over in this trade deal. They may be getting all your money. You may be, weasels as far as they're concerned. But, like, you guys do have a defensible house, because over the centuries, you're all about defense, right? It's been like, all right, we screwed up. We're getting screwed. Like, it's all just about defending this territory and never letting them have any more, because they probably have taken your territories in the past. So that works really well. Cool. So that is character creation, and that's house creation as well. It's a little bit crunchy. There's a fair amount of rolling and a little bit of math involved, but I like it because it gave us this sort of infrastructure for what is likely to be plausible and possible in this world, and also gives you guys a lot of free reign and narrative control over what you would like this house to look like. And I don't think we're going to be doing too much resource management. I mentioned to you guys in the primer, but I like a lot of narratively driven, open, loose storytelling. But it is nice to have a little bit of infrastructure there just to be tracking, like, oh shit, there's a famine, everyone's dying, and we need to solve this problem. And I think that's pretty much as far as that will go. And it can be a little bit fun to, save up some points and invest in a tower. And the cool thing about it is that your role-playing decisions and actions influence those scores. So it's also a way for me to reward you guys as a party, to not just experience points and not just, hey, you guys as people improve. It's you guys as a community improve and grow. And if you take over a land, if you win like a castle siege, guess what? You guys have just won yourself a 30-point investment that you would have had to have spent 10 months building previously. So there's a lot of cool stuff that can be done with the system itself. So if you guys in the chat are ever wanting to look at the rule set, I encourage it. It's a Song of Ice and Fire role-playing game by Green Ronin Publishing. It's a little bit of an older game, but it stands up to the test of time. And I'm excited for this game now. We've got this awesome story with the McNairs, who are like these stoked warriors with their stoked hall, fiercely defensive of their lands and their people, but also they've done some naughty things in the past, and they've been burned for it, such to the point where they are now under the thumb of a neighboring faction, whom I think will likely turn out to be some of our main source of conflict in this campaign, because they don't seem to me to be like very nice people. And with I think we'll actually bring in this journey from the Night's Watch. Devran is going to be coming down from the wall, recruiting troops, and stumbling across something which might be quite a tense situation with tensions rising and fires heating on both sides. We've got Cicero, now a firstborn son, ready to take on some responsibility and leadership with his friend Kaylee, who is not at all prepared, but incredibly ready in many other ways to get involved in some adventure. And then we have our Septon, the bumbling old fool, a godsworn, or is he? We'll have to find out a little bit more. Then we have joining us next week is, of course, Steel Rain, who's going to be joining us as a landed knight who has a strange affliction to water and a great sense of claustrophobia, which doesn't work well for his helmet. So we've got a really interesting cast and crew of characters. We've set up a really interesting narrative and conflict for next week. And that's what we're going to do every week starting next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern is when we do Game of Thrones, The War of the Roses. So hopefully you guys in chat enjoyed the session 0 and have enjoyed seeing a little bit of the building of the story and see how it's come about. As our Stoat warriors will be facing some hard times, I think, because of course winter is coming. But let's go around to cast and crew. Great job, everyone, tonight. That was awesome, and hopefully you guys feel a little bit more acquainted with what we'll be doing. The first session, I will be handling like the rules section of things, like how we roll, skills, stats, all that stuff. It won't be too difficult, don't worry. It's basically roll a d6 and try and roll high. And that's really about as far as it goes. But let's go around to cast and crew. Did we enjoy ourselves? And where can we find you guys online if you have other projects, streams, that kind of thing? Feel free to plug them. Jen, Dreamwisp, awesome job tonight with the Stoat lore.
Oh, yes. With the Wikipedia and I, we get along well.
Good friends, yeah.
Yeah, this was a blast. I'm really, really excited. I really think there's an interesting story here and some cool intrigue, and I think it makes a lot of sense for all of the secrets that everybody's got simmering. And yeah, you can find me. I am on Twitter as @DreamWisp, and Instagram, and I'm on Twitch as DreamWispJen. And the rest of the time I'm in the real world making television. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
That's where to find me.
I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about this Devran character. Great stuff. Joseph, great job tonight. How was that?
It was fantastic. I always love world building, and that things just at some point start to click, and things just make a ridiculous amount of sense. And you're like, we did this, we made this, but we absolutely did. And I'm so happy to be a part of this. And I am thoroughly excited to introduce you all to Cicero. He's an interesting fella. So I can't wait until next week when we can get into things. My name is Joseph. You can find me on Twitter at JosephIsNotFast. That's kind of where I do a majority of my D&D things, and I'm excited to get into it with you guys. So thanks very much.
Absolutely, great job, Joseph. And Kitty, great job tonight. I'm excited to ruin this fresh-faced young girl's life in the coming weeks. How was that?
I'm super excited. This sounds like a great story, and I'm ready to really delve into it. I've already started working on character art for a character even
awesome.
To that point. So I'm a full-time freelance artist, illustrator, and streamer here on Twitch. I do creative streams and roleplay in games, and do my voice acting too, I guess. So you find me on Twitter, Awkward Kitty Inc., Twitch, Awkward Kitty Inc. It's all that. Commissions are open.
Go ahead and check her out. Some awesome pits to go and follow over there for sure, my friends. Great job, Kitty. I'm looking forward to what this game has to offer for us. And last but not least, Bird vs. Plane. One of the there are a couple of characters in this campaign that have got a little bit to reveal about themselves, and I feel like we've got a lot to learn about Septon Birch still. Great job tonight. How was that?
Oh, I'm so excited for this story, and we could not have built a better background for this character to exist in. Everything just clicks and makes sense, and I'm so excited to tell not only my story, but all of your stories, Will's story, just this world story. This is going to be so much fun. You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at Bird vs. Plane. You can find me Saturdays on Tall Squall's channel on the Vice, Tuesdays on Udmade Gaming's channel, every Monday night here, and you can find me at Bird in the Storm Publishing. So catch me all those places.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I'm looking forward to next week at 8 where we get to play this one through fully for our first session. But in the meantime, we will be back tomorrow at the same time of 8 p.m. Eastern for the World's Tree Burns as Dan Dillon's Kobold Press Midgard campaign. Where you can join us for that. As while we do have Vampire the Masquerade happening normally on Tuesdays at 5, that actually starts a week later. So you'll be seeing Laugh Love Lindy starting next week. So we're just on at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow, but you know, I've streamed something like 54 hours in the past like 3 days. So hopefully you guys probably need a little bit of a break from me as well anyway. So what we're going to go do is we're going to go host and raid a friend of ours who is joining the channel this season. His name is Zero Doxy, and she is playing some American Truck Simulator. It's going to be a good time, my friends. Go and relax. She's awesome. And we'll see you guys over there. But until next time, try not to throw too many net ones. We want to be laughing when you do. Good night, everyone. Bye. Stoats rule.